Introduction of community psychology. You must be thinking that when we already have so many disciplines of psychology for understanding human behavior, then what is the need for the discipline of community psychology? Well, let me tell you that community psychology is a much needed branch of knowledge and it is different from the other existing disciplines. Why? Because it seeks to understand people and their behavior in their own context rather than just as individuals. It does not study the individual or context, that is the society alone, but it also studies their linkages. Community psychology focuses more on wellness rather than on illness. And so far, the disciplines that we have been studying, unfortunately, focus more on pathology and illnesses rather than on wellness. But before we go ahead, I think we need to define the term community first. The Bantam House Dictionary by Steen 1969 defines community as a social group of any size whose members reside in a specific locality, they share government and have a common cultural and historical heritage. A social group sharing common characteristics or interests and perceived or perceiving itself as distinct in some respect from the larger society within which it exists. Eccles, a group of men or women leading a common life according to a rule. Ecole, an assemblage of plant and animal populations occupying a given area. There is joint possession. The similar characteristics are there: identity, agreement, common interests, and of course the community, which consists of the public or the society. In sum, the things denoted by community are things that are shared or common, such as the geography, the government, culture or personal characteristics. But not all of these things are shared by all the members of a community. Let's define community psychology now. Community psychology is that branch of psychology which is concerned with person-environment interactions and the ways in which society affects individual and community functioning. George Oxford in 1992 defines it as a psychology which is about understanding people within their social worlds and using this understanding to improve people's well-being. Community psychology is basically concerned with the relationships of the individual to the communities and society. Through collaborative research and action, community psychologists seek to understand and to enhance quality of life for individuals, communities and society. According to Naidu, Pillai and Brauman in 2007, community psychology is an emerging branch of applied psychology concerned with understanding people in the context of their communities. It uses a variety of interventions, including prevention, health promotion, and social action, in order to facilitate change and improve mental health and social conditions for individuals, groups, organizations, and communities. It would be a good idea to define community psychology in the Indian context. Community psychology can be defined as understanding the needs of people and the resources available to meet those needs. Understanding community helps community psychology to focus on formulating interventions that provide opportunities for optimum growth of its people. Because lack of resources such as individual, organizational and community level can have very negative impact on their mental health. For example, social conditions of poverty, alienation, isolation and in general a lack of social resources is clearly seen to contribute to mental health problems, which is a domain of community psychology. On explicating the definitions of community psychology, we see that firstly, it views people in context. Community psychology is concerned with relationships between individuals and their communities, and it seeks to view people in relation to their place, history, and culture. So, what we are trying to say here is that we don't see people in isolation. Rather, we see them as individuals in their own communities. Secondly, it is a research oriented field. Research is highly collaborative and participatory. It is done with community members rather than on community members. It is an action oriented field. Community psychology emphasizes on improving the quality of life of individuals, communities, and society. Thus, we can say that it is an action oriented field. Moving on to the principles of community psychology. Social and environmental factors are critically important in determining and changing behavior. Social and community interventions, which are system oriented interventions as against person oriented interventions, can be effective for making social institutions like the family and school more health enhancing, as well as for reducing individual suffering. Such interventions should be aimed at prevention rather than at treatment or rehabilitation of emotional disorders. Not only the individual in need, but the population at risk is the proper concern of community psychology. Interventions should have its goal the enhancement of social competence rather than simply reduction of psychological distress. Community oriented programs should stress the adaptive rather than the pathological in social life. I guess you can see the difference here. Help is most effective when available close to the settings in which the problems arise. Therefore, community clinicians should work in familiar settings close to the person in need rather than in socially and geographically alien settings. The community clinician should reach out to the clients rather than waiting passively for them to seek his services. Such services should be flexible, they should be readily available at the place and at the time of need, and offered in an atmosphere which reduces rather than accentuates the social distance between helper and the helped. Help should be available to those who need it the most, not only to those who seek it. To use available resources and to extend his potential impact, the professional should collaborate with community resource people, that is, the caretakers, and also use non-professional co-workers. His work may involve consultation more than direct services. The traditional role requirements and professional customs have to be relaxed. Community service requires imaginative programming and new conceptual models. Innovation hence has to be encouraged. The community should participate in, if not control, the development and operation of programs which are to serve its needs. Program priorities should reflect the needs and concerns of the community members. Mental health problems should be broadly rather than narrowly viewed, for when they interlock with many other factors of social well-being such as jobs, house and education, they work the best. To be maximally effective, community mental health programs should deal with as wide a range of social problems as possible. Educating the public to understand the nature and cause of psychosocial problems and the resources available for dealing with them is a valued task. Since many mental health problems relate to broad scale social stresses such as poverty, racism, urban density, and alienation, which are beyond the reach of professional interventions, the community psychologist should be oriented towards and possibly facilitate social reform. To develop the knowledge necessary for informed intervention, community psychology requires naturalistic and ecological research approaches. Let's talk about the field of community psychology. Community psychology is oriented towards preventing problems rather than treating them after they arise. They try to promote effective, healthy functioning of all members of community rather than intervening when problems develop just for some few members. Community psychologists believe that the ultimate goal of prevention can be best attained through social and community interventions which alter the social institutions like the family, the society, culture, and government, all of which incidentally affect an individual's well being. The field of community psychology takes an altogether different perspective. According to this field, the problems don't arise from disturbances within individual's psyche. Rather, they arise from the inability of the community to incorporate and support its members. It sees people in terms of their strengths and competencies. Community psychology covers a broad range of activities. It is more a way of thinking than an explicit set of principles and practices. Community approach spans spectrum from interventions close to the therapeutic mode to those of social action. Thus, in practice, one community psychologist may work in direct therapy like services to people presently in distress, as in crisis intervention, while another takes as his target the social setting himself in the interest of people living under its influence. According to Sarensen in 1972, an example of the latter might be an effort to create a setting which is more likely to enhance the emotional and intellectual growth of children in it. Community psychology is a broad and interdisciplinary field which incorporates other fields including sociology, political science, public health, cross-cultural psychology, and social psychology. Community psychologists study all aspects of an individual's context which influence him or her, including cultural, economic, social, political, and environmental factors. Community psychologists may focus on both the applied and theoretical, but mostly they simultaneously emphasize both, that is, the applied service delivery and theory based research. While some psychologists conduct research on theoretical issues, others might apply this theoretical knowledge to solve problems within the community. Psychologists in the field of community psychology find ways to help disadvantaged people feel more connected with their communities. Try to understand social issues, they try to build relationships among individuals and community groups. They develop, implement, and evaluate action-oriented community-based programs. Community psychologists might work in the area of education as well. They work at colleges and universities. They conduct researches and also work in government settings in the health and human services sector. Moving on to the main aims of community psychology. Basically, the main aims can be grouped into two main aims. The first is prevention. The concept of prevention can be applied to a wide range of problems of physical and mental health both. Now, what is prevention? Prevention refers to the interventions designed to change the course of a problem or stopping something from happening. Kaplan in 1948 described following three types of preventions. The first is primary prevention. Primary prevention refers to the efforts aimed at reducing the possibility of disease in an at-risk population, that is, preventing the original occurrence of a disease. For example, immunization against polio can be taken as a primary prevention. Primary prevention can further take place at two levels. Firstly, at social action level, which involves influencing legislative and social programs serving welfare, health, and educational needs of the society. Secondly, at interpersonal level, it involves influencing individuals, families, and community groups through direct face-to-face interactions. After primary prevention comes secondary prevention. Secondary prevention involves early detection and treatment of diseases. It involves widespread screening and testing of individuals and techniques for bringing the diseased ones quickly to appropriate clinical settings. The final kind of prevention is the tertiary prevention. Tertiary prevention is about efforts aimed at reducing the after effects of illness and helping the patients rehabilitate for restoring their normal functioning and helping them with adjustment in the society. Talking about competence development. Competence development involves promoting positive human development, which includes sense of control over one's life and feelings of satisfaction and well-being. Lacrosse and Ricks in 1972 found that a high degree of personal competence in children predicted their good adjustment as adults. According to the view of lifespan developmental psychologists, people develop through different stages throughout their life, confronting each stage with some conflicts, challenges, and satisfactions, which ultimately lead to attaining self-esteem, autonomy, and control over one's own life. Another approach to competence development is that of empowerment. This concept was promoted by Rappaport in 1982. This approach is of enhancing control over one's life by helping people cope with the social systems that deprive them of their sense of control. Moving on to community psychology and its related fields. Community psychology draws from related fields and has many similarities with other fields. But at the same time, it is a distinct field and has its own important contributions to make. Some of the related fields are as following. Clinical psychology. Community psychology is quite similar to clinical psychology in its action orientation. But clinical psychology focuses on individual problems, while community psychology tries to understand social issues or threats in the underlying environment or the lack of fit between the individuals and their environments. Clinical psychology also focuses on illnesses, while community psychology focuses on wellness. So here comes a major difference between the two. Social psychology and sociology. Community psychology takes a holistic and group or system-based approach, much like that in social psychology and sociology, in understanding human behavior and how people fit into society. But the difference comes when community psychology is more applied than these disciplines and tends to be more concerned with using psychological and social knowledge to solving problems, creating real world solutions and taking immediate action. Public health and mental health counseling. Like public health and mental health counseling, community psychology also adopts a preventive orientation and is focused on the prevention of problems and the promotion of health and well-being. But it differs from these disciplines in its strong research-oriented component. which is about performing original research, developing theoretical frameworks, and then applying this knowledge directly within public and private communities. Also, it differs from the public health in its concern with social institutions and the quality of life in general. Next related field is that of industrial and organizational psychology. Community psychology borrows techniques from industrial and organizational psychology. But unlike this field, community psychology is focused at the same time on the problems of clients and workers as opposed to solely the goals and values of the management. It tends to deal with community organizations, human service delivery systems, and support networks. It is also concerned with issues of social regulation and control, and with enhancing the positive characteristics and coping abilities of relatively powerless groups. Social work. Community psychology overlaps with the field of social work, but it is quite different from social work in its research orientation. Community psychologists believe in performing rigorous, well conceived research directed at social problems. Talking about the organization of community psychology, the Society of Community Research and Action (SCRA), Division 27 of the APA, is the official organization of community psychology. It publishes the Community Psychologist newsletter and the American Journal of Community Psychology. SCRA was founded on the idea that social systems and environment influences are important centers of interest for enhancing wellness through preventive research and interventions. The SCRA mission. The society is devoted to advancing theory, research, and social action to promote positive well-being, increase empowerment, and prevent the development of problems of communities, groups, and individuals. The action and research agenda of the field is guided by three broad principles. Community research and action is an active collaboration between researchers, practitioners, and community members, and it utilizes multiple methodologies. Human competencies and problems are best understood by viewing people within their social, cultural, and historical context. Change strategies are needed at both the individual and systems level for effective competence promotion and problem prevention. The four broad principles guiding SCRA are: community research and action requires explicit attention to and respect for diversity among people and settings. Human competencies and problems are best understood by viewing people within their social, cultural, economic, geographic, and historical contexts. Community research and action is an active collaboration among researchers, practitioners, and community members that use multiple methodologies. Change strategies are needed at multiple levels in order to foster settings that promote competence and well-being. Moving on to SCRA goals. The goals are to promote the use of social and behavioral science to enhance the well-being of people and their communities and to prevent harmful outcomes. Second goal is to promote theory development and research that increases our understanding of human behavior in context. Thirdly, to encourage the exchange of knowledge and skills in community research and action among those in academic and applied settings. Fourth, to engage in action research and practice committed to liberating oppressed people and respecting all cultures. Fifthly, to promote the development of careers in community research and action in both academic and applied settings.